It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Scientists are sounding the alarm over confirmation the government's Advanced Technology Institute, this is Shane Reti's baby in Auckland, is being partially paid for by reallocations from public research funds, including the defunded Callaghan Innovation. Ben Van Erd is with us this morning. Ben Wiley Van Erd, I should say, is with us. He's a physicist in Wellington. Ben, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Thank you for having me on the program.
Great to have you here. The government says, look, this is about commercial outcomes, productivity. We've been pumping money into science and getting nothing out, meaningful out for our country, our economy, our people, so we need to do something about it. Do you think that's a fair argument from them?
I think what's really been disappointing about finding out about this now is that we didn't know, right? We thought when we heard the news last month, a couple of months ago, that this might be finally science turning the corner, because we've been under the pump for a very, very long time. Funding in the science sector just has not kept up with inflation for well over 10 years now. And finally, especially after the deep cuts last year, we thought, here it is. Here's where we start turning the corner. Here's where we start growing our science capacity again. So to learn that it's not a growth at all, it's just coming from other places, is just very, very disappointing.
So you were under the understanding that the money they were announcing for science would be in addition to topping up, as opposed to just taking from one bank account and putting it in another.
Yeah, that's absolutely the impression that we got from the minister's announcement. That's what we were all expecting. I think a lot of scientists are going to be waking up today and being quite concerned about the future of their own careers with the cuts in these funds. Because these funds are actually incredibly important for how research institutes, universities put together their research programs, how they employ scientists, and how they make their budgets meet.
You know how people get up in arms about the climate change science work that gets done? Given the fact that climate change affects the whole world, isn't every scientist studying climate change, and should we be throwing our money against it up into it too?
I certainly would not say that every scientist is studying climate change. Look, scientists study a whole range of things, and scientists don't just study what's the hot topic right now. They build these careers over decades, really, and they specialize in areas where maybe not a lot of other people are working in. Climate change is hot right now from a sort of a social and a political perspective, but that certainly doesn't mean that scientists have diverted all of their work into climate change. We study a wide variety of topics. I myself am not really studying in a climate change area.
Sorry, I didn't mean every scientist. Every scientist is solely studying climate change, but that we would have scientists around the world being funded to do that. You know, are there some? Should we pick a lane? And I guess this is what the government's saying, that what we want is more commercially viable science outcomes from the research that we're doing.
I think it's fair to say that over the last few years, there has been a movement in both the previous government's attempt at a science reform and this one's towards trying to get more commercial outcomes out of science. But we just don't think it's a good approach to be lowering the amount of science that we're doing. I think people possibly don't realize that since last year or so, we are down about 600 science jobs. Our science funds have already been cut by 10%. So we are down below where we were before. We've been looking for where the new money is going to come in, and we thought this might have been it, but actually it's just reallocation of funds from one place to another. And the particularly worrying one is the money that's being taken away from the Marsden Fund. So this is New Zealand's fund for blue skies research. And one of the very strong messages that came through in both of the attempts at reform has been that there must remain a place for fundamental blue skies research in New Zealand. We thought there would be a reallocation of some of our science funding, but we really thought that the blue skies stuff would be safe, because blue skies and fundamental research is really, really important.
What's blue skies mean?
The entire system going.
Ben, what is blue skies?
Blue skies mean, okay, so when we talk about blue skies research funding, we're talking about research funding that doesn't have an aim in mind. It's research funding which has science excellence behind it. So these researchers who are winning these Marsden grants, they're at the top of their game in their respective fields, but they're just following the curiosity. They don't know where it might lead. And we know that some of the greatest advances, they come from this kind of
Do they?
This kind of curiosity-driven research.
Can you give me an example of a person who was just willy-nilly following their curiosity and made an amazing discovery? You can probably give me 100 now, I suppose.
One of my favorite examples of this doesn't come from New Zealand, but there was a biologist who was studying the structure of the eye inside of crayfish. And it turned out that by studying the structure of this eye in crayfish, they discovered an entirely new way to make a X-ray telescope, because the crayfish eye doesn't have a lens like we have in our eye. It operates entirely off of mirrors and reflective surfaces. And it turns out that's exactly what you need to study X-rays in the deep depths of space. So nobody could have predicted that you would find a way to create a telescope by studying the eye of a lobster, but this is what happened.
And who was funding him to look at the eye of a crayfish?
I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid. I think that was an international story. It's just one of my favorite examples of how curiosity-driven research around the world leads to unexpected outcomes that have great benefits for mankind.
Basically, we need to keep looking, as humans, to advance, we need to keep looking under all of the rocks on the beach to see what's
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.